if we are to win the war, I think we must really think in terms of generations, not about months or years, in generational terms.
That was Ukrainian General Beletsky, who is the commander of the 3rd Corps in the Ukrainian Army, speaking via teleconference yesterday to a group that was in Kiev, actually, led by a number of Western folks. A British moderator, General David Petraeus, was there, and I think Carl Bildt was also there, a former European politician. Listen, we often talk to you about things on this channel about what various politicians are saying from the different countries, and we always show you multiple sides to a situation, and we always talk about what's happening on the battlefield. We always see about what the claims made by the leaders of the various countries, how that matches up with ground reality. Well, today, because of this conference here, we have an opportunity to hear from the Ukrainian leaders themselves. Let's go back to General Beletsky, because he's going to talk about how, yeah, there is some problems here, but we have a golden egg that we can lay.
Well, it's an open secret that the situation on the line of contact is very complicated. Ukrainians are impacted by a massive lack of resources, and munitions are also in short supply. Well, technically, it seems clear. In addition to promoting the evolution of aerial unmanned vehicles, I'd say that we are on the threshold of a revolution in the ground. Unmanned vehicles that seem to be able to replace a significant number of personnel, both in logistical matters and in warfare and engagement.
So he starts off by saying it's an open secret that, yes, we're suffering lots of losses on the front line, and that we have a hard time even manning the front line, which Cerski commented on there, up to a 6-fold disadvantage in the key areas of the battle. And then you see he wants to pin his hopes on like a silver bullet. Well, we have this incredible technological development, and whether it's UAVs, drones of various types, or robotic vehicles on the ground, he said that can take the place of people so that we don't have to require all these bodies, that we can offset that. And he made, in part of his comments there at this conference, he says, you know what, all of these innovations that are taking place really building themselves up. We are making all of the advancements here. Russia is behind us. They reply and that they have the ability to produce at scale. That's true. But all of the advancements are coming from our side. All of them, as he said. Russia's not doing anything of its own. I don't know how he squares that with the Garin 3, which Ukraine still doesn't have a jet-powered drone or the production capacity or the class of the Garin 2s even. But forget that, I guess. They all these other things that they have. But it really doesn't matter. I mean, for example, the FPV drone, that one started, and whether Ukraine started it and Russia followed it, or Russia started it and Ukraine followed it, doesn't really matter. These things keep on escalating and elevating on the battlefield. Whatever one side does, the other side's going to figure it out, and that they're going to then try and outdo it. And then the other side is going to have to counter that and try and do something different. Then you have the electronic warfare, etc. And then it's constantly shifting. Sometimes the Russians are ahead in electronic warfare. Sometimes the Ukraine side is. Then you have the fiber optic drones, of course. And again, it doesn't make any difference who actually started it. I mean, bragging on yourself about saying they always came from us, I don't know that I'm not sure, frankly. I just know that I had seen reports here, and whether I saw the first report on the Russian side or the first report on the Ukraine side, who knows who actually started it. Doesn't matter, though. Both sides have them. And what does matter a whole lot is who has more of them. And General Cerski provided the context that Russia Ukraine can never catch up. So with manpower, they are in a terminal decline. Maybe they can catch up in some areas with drones and technology so that you can come even. But even when they catch up with technological capacity, they can never catch up with technological quantity, because the Russians can bring to bear both technological advancements and the production capacity at scale that the Ukraine side will simply never have. And that's why that's one of the consequences of Russia's nonstop air power drone warfare and missile barrages that they have throughout the country of Ukraine, because every time they find any kind of a factory that's getting built, they attack it and destroy it, or the electric generation capable necessary to get those factories to work, etc. Ukraine's trying to do the same thing on the Russian, but it's far, far less quantity. And so therefore, in a country that is massively bigger than Ukraine, they have the stuff spread out so that the consequence and the cost to the Russian side will virtually always be less because of redundancy. That's what Russia's built into the system. So everything you keep seeing here shows that you're not going to be able to get to a generational struggle, because you might not survive the rest of this year. And even if you do, you can see that the math is going to eventually be playing. When you don't have enough manpower to replace your losses, that means you're on a net loss every month and you're getting smaller. And we know for certain, we know from General Cerski, that the Russians are on a net gain every single month. They add more than they lose every month. And so they're getting stronger in both personnel and in the equipment. But that doesn't seem to bother these generals here. So going back to General Beletsky, he's first of all, he said something that does make some sense, and then he goes afield from there. He's talking first of all about, you have to do a proper assessment of your enemy if you want to come up with a good strategy.
Any sort of planning starts with proper assessment of the enemy and its assets. And this is the strong point. Our strong point is in our innovative potential, our creativity. I'm not going to detail things that will come next, but already now Ukraine has certain first steps to announce, to usher in new evolutionary steps in this war. The key thing is, rather than telling about it to everyone, we should be able to strategically work on that and practically implement these updated strategies. Yes, we are much more creative, and if we are successful in their implementation, we will have the upper hand. We will go with our innovation, and Russia will be still trailing a year, 2 years, maybe 6 years behind.
Russia's going to be trailing a year, 2 years, maybe 6 years behind. Okay, the war has been going on for 3.5 years. So if you're going to argue that Russia's going to be 6 years behind, then that means that you should be thinking that you can see stuff on the ground, tactics and capabilities-wise, from 2.5 years before the war started, if you think that that's what's going on here. And yet, as I just cataloged, you see that whatever innovation one side does, the other side mirrors it, oftentimes within weeks or months, and sometimes less than even than that, because the cycle and the speed of innovation and counter innovation and trying to counter what they're doing and then to counter, et cetera, is just off the charts. It's always like that in war, but especially it is in this one, because both Ukraine and Russia have some really good technical people. They have good scientists. And of course, the Ukraine side has access to the West as well. But Russia, in its own right, has always been well known for its scientific capabilities and its education level, et cetera. So there's no shortage. That's just self-delusion to say, yeah, but we're going to be ahead and Russia will be a year, 2 years, 6 years behind. There's no evidence of that at all. In fact, there's overwhelming evidence to the contrary. When you are saying that, one wonders, are you saying that because the people in the room have no idea? They all love the Ukraine side. They all feel Russia's evil and wicked. So anything that is said that casts shade on the Russian side will be eagerly adopted and believed. And perhaps the intent is to say, well, let's tell them that so that they'll keep giving us from the West more money. And there's no shortage of that either. There's plenty of people that seem to be willing to do that. And in fact, that's one of the things that the European Union is stepping up both their own individual defense spending, and then they're also stepping up not just with supplying weapons and ammunition and money to Ukraine, but buying American weapons to then funnel to Ukraine as well. Now, I don't know how long that is going to be sustainable. At the moment, it has been, and so through now over 3.5 years, they have been continuing on, though at a certainly slower pace. And even with Trump here, you're talking about $1 billion a month for 10 months. That's $10 billion over the next 10 months, and that's 1/6 of the last Biden package, which was $61 billion before he left office. And you see that made no difference whatsoever. So 1/6 of that much won't either. But if their idea is to say, you know what, we'll just keep going and this hope for a miracle. You may recall we did interview somebody on our show who was on the Ukraine side, who admitted on air that we're just hoping for a miracle. If we just fight one more day, maybe tomorrow something can be found to turn this over. And that is, I guess, a theoretical possibility that you could find some actual game-changing weapon that could turn the tide. It's almost never happened in human history that you find an actual game changer deep into a war that reversed the tide of it, after especially suffering the massive casualties that the Ukraine side has. It's to base your policy on the hope of a miracle is something more closer to committing suicide than it is to just, well, let's buy one more day to hope out, because there's no rational basis for that hope. And there is very much a rational basis to expect that your side will continue to lose over time, and you may not get to a generation. And by the way, you are sacrificing a generation of irreplaceable manpower to hope for this miracle. Which one of the reasons why I say so often that what the European side is doing and what the Biden administration has done, and now what the Trump administration is doing, these policies are immoral because they willingly sacrifice generations of men in Ukraine on this flimsy hope that there could be a miracle when there's no rational prospect of that. But they don't seem to be caring. So the things I just told you are real and measurable and quantifiable, and throughout history, quite logical, but there just doesn't seem to be any concern. As long as Zelensky and his generals want to keep fighting, Ukraine or Europe and the United States and our defense industrial bases are more than happy to just keep funneling money and munitions and weapons in so that we get paid. So with our industrial capacity gets paid. That doesn't do anything for our national security, because, as I mentioned, if all the war stopped today, it would probably take close to 5 years to replace our own inventories of all the things that have gone out, meaning that the longer this goes on and you keep funneling all this weapons and everything to Ukraine, everything that's made, you're going to have to funnel more than what is made, because we don't have the capacity at that level. So that means that we'll keep dwindling our reports. So this is bad for the United States. But then an odd thing there about General Beletsky, because after in that soundbite I just showed you there, where he's talking about, well, we need to base our strategy that we're doing something on an accurate assessment of the enemy capabilities, which then he proceeds not to do. Then he also made this odd statement that they're looking for a strategy.
Funding will always be in Ukraine, elsewhere, and of course we need more funds, but more than anything we need a very clear strategy as to how we are going to use the resources made available to us.
So you got to find a strategy? Hang on, 3.5 years into the war and you're looking for a strategy? Although then at other ports you mentioned that, well, we're on a strategy. Which is it? I mean, we're not talking about finding two disparate comments from, periods of time apart. We're talking about the same conference. That on the one hand, you need money, but you got to have a strategy for how you're going to use that. And then the other hand, well, we kind of have a strategy and it's based on this and we're hoping for that, etc. So if you are saying, all right, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and say, well, he was talking about a tactical strategy, what they do on the ground. Our tactical strategy is almost a contradiction there. But if their strategy for how to fight on the ground, maybe that's what they meant. And now they're saying this is a financial strategy, maybe a different category, but that's not any better. Because if you don't have a financial connection to your on the ground strategy, then you can't make it you can't bring it to fruition. And if you haven't even formed a financial strategy while all this money's coming in and while you're trying to get more, what does that leave? that leaves open the door to increased and even more corruption. And I promise you, there's tons of reports out there. This money has been funneled, God only knows where. The equipment, the actual cash, it keeps going all over the place. I mean, there's been some really famous situations with their former minister of defense having been sacked because of corruption. Many generals were fired because of corruption. The attack into, I think it was Kharkiv in late 2023, I believe is when that started. All kinds of information out there that all this money that was supposed to have gone in to build national defenses and trench lines and barriers, et cetera, was just a lot of it was just piled up in a corner, and those guys took the money. So, I mean, it's just infamous and famous for all the corruption. And in fact, prior to the war, they were already the most corrupt country in all of Europe. And obviously that is only accelerated with time, because when you get that much money flooding in, like we saw in Afghanistan, when there's no controls over it, it's going to end up all over the place. And when you are now admitting 3.5 years in, you need to form a financial strategy while the money's rolling in left and right from Europe, especially. That tells you where that stuff's going to end up. And again, hope is not a strategy, which he seems to be going down to. Well, he's not the only one that has a disconnection from reality. And, you know, this is, I almost hate to do this to you, but we're going to show you something that General Petraeus said, because, I mean, they keep putting him on the dice. I showed you, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, I was just particularly livid by something I saw from both Petraeus and General Hodges. And they keep being asked by the most elite Western media what their thoughts are or whatever. And I showed you how catastrophically wrong they were, especially regarding the 2023 Ukrainian offensive, and how even before that was made, I had already laid out the very clear fundamentals that anyone could have made. I'm not some kind of brilliant person. I'm adequate, and I'm decent at just calling things the way they are by seeing the actual inputs and seeing the fundamentals go, because I've studied it, I've lived it, I've fought on the ground in high intensity warfare, etc. So got a pretty good idea what I'm talking about there, but not a fraction of what should be the knowledge of these generals. They should have a lot more experience and knowledge and training and everything else than I do, and yet they were catastrophically wrong. But not only do they keep getting microphones put in their face, they keep getting invited to conferences like this, where I think that you'll see that Petraeus is more than happy to give the company line.
Underscore what we heard earlier there as well, Jillian, and that is that the destiny.
I can see Victor's getting
the destiny of Ukraine, and I thank Victor as always. And I was at Yalta with him the last time it was actually in Yalta. The destiny of Ukraine is the destiny of Europe. And if we recognize that, we need to take 3 actions: change the battlefield realities, dramatically increase the economic pressure, and then provide Ukraine with credible guarantees, binding commitments, snapback sanction promises, and a variety of other actions, because only then will the realities change Putin's calculus from believing that he can still win to recognizing that the balance is no longer in his favor. And then, and only then, is when a ceasefire or an agreement becomes possible and durable.
Oh, hell no. That then and only then, I mean, you're just showing your incredible ignorance. I mean, I could be a lot stronger, but I'm trying to maintain professionalism. But it's hard to do, because when he says, we have to change the dynamics on the ground, we have to compel Russia through economic means and through military pain to realize that they can't win, and then and only then will they talk about peace generally. No, if that theoretical, hypothetical point were reached, it's not like that they're going to start trying to be willing to have a negotiation. They're already willing to have a negotiation, and they're emphatic about it. They keep saying it over and over. They keep bragging on Trump and thanking him for at least having the conversation. The issue is you want him to come to a point to where he sacrifices all of his objectives and just capitulates to what you want. And then and only then will that conversation take place. And in that weird sense, I guess he's kind of right, because until or unless Russia can be brought to that point, they won't do it. But I'm just telling you that's a hypothetical possibility, because in reality, there's no way you're going to get Russia to that point. There is no amount of pain that Russia can be, that you can impose upon Russia that will cause them to say, all right, forget it, whatever. I guess let's just quit the fighting today, and then we'll call it a day. And you will trust that the NATO side and the Ukraine side, that they won't just start this and use this as a chance to prepare for the next level of war. They would be fools to do that. Any country would be a fool to trust what the West has done after all the history that has already happened there from a position of superiority. And that is just objectively where we are. So when you see Petraeus talking about, well, we need to, change the dynamics on the ground, we need security guarantees, we need to continue to be able to arm Ukraine, and they need to have all these promises, etc. That is fantasy. It's always been fantasy. Every time he said that in the past, it's been validated as fantasy. It's never happened, and yet Russia continues to just methodically chew through the Ukraine side. And one has to wonder, why in the world do we want to keep going down something that can't be successfully accomplished? And I guess we have to return back to the comment a minute ago that our policies are immoral, and they're focused on, we don't care really what happens to the Ukraine side. If they continue to bleed out, and their general, the commanding general Cerski, their president Zelensky, and now these two corps commanders, they're all willing to do it. So you can see from the West, they may say, who are we to say no to them? We benefit off of this. We make money off of this. President Trump says we make money off this, even though he can apparently understands that they can never win. But they're like, okay, that's fine. That is immoral. That is immoral. Just categorically, you can do it. And you see that is playing out, and the Ukraine side is willing to play its role in the destruction of its country and its people, but it is immoral to do. I mean, it's akin to saying, hey, that drug addict over there, I mean, he's a loser, but hey, he wants drugs. So, I mean, why should I not sell him the drugs? At least then I can make some money. I mean, it's not going to help him out, but he wants it. So who am I to say no to him? It's the same thing. And I would challenge vociferously anyone who claims the contrary, because we too often want to have these high-minded values and morals and claiming that we care about the Ukrainian people, when it's the same thing as giving a drug addict who's already probably terminal more drugs and say, well, at least we can make money until he finally dies. That's where we're at, folks. I don't care what anybody says. The facts and the evidence on the ground scream that outcome. So the next time you hear one of these guys talk about how much they care for Ukraine, how much they care for our security is tied to Ukraine security, that's BS. It's complete BS. There's no truth to it. And I suspect that these people like Petraeus are well aware of that. They know that the cumulative power of NATO with three nuclear weapons arsenals on our side, understand that Russia is never going to have a conventional attack into the heart of Europe, because they know that especially France, who also I think dishonestly claims their version of the commander, or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff this summer has said they're coming for Paris, and we've got to be ready. When they're not coming for Paris. You know good and well they can't, because if they ever did, that's why you have a nuclear arsenal, and Vladimir Putin is well aware of that, and he's never going to drive his country into suicide, which is what it would take there. And of course, then you're going to get your own country vaporized in retaliation. I think people understand that, and God help us, no rational person, even an irrational one, is not going to commit suicide. So they just want to keep the fiction going and keep the gravy train going as long as they can. One other, there was that General Bletsky was the third corps commander. There's also the second corps commander who seemed to be making a play again. He's playing his role here. He said, we need more cash.
But victory also depends on finance, on support. That's why it's not just up to us, but the European societies that should be involved, because without your assistance, without your financial support, it'll be very tough for them. But not just for us. If Ukraine, God forbid, does not stand, the next victim will be European societies. And trust me, Russia will not depart from their goals, because their goals are about capturing and destroying other countries. So make no mistake, the war will not stop here in Ukraine if we fall. You can never make a deal with the Muscovites.
So you see there, he's basically saying there is no deal to be made. We can't make a deal. So all we can do is fight and die. I mean, that is irrational, and it's contradictory to what President Trump, at least on paper, is trying to get to with his public comments. He's trying to get to a negotiated deal. You have Zelensky, at least on paper, saying he's trying to get a negotiated deal. He just wants it on his terms. But now this guy's saying there's no terms. And he says, trust me when I tell you, yeah, no, I don't trust you. I don't trust a word you say, because it's not backed up by evidence. It's contradicted by evidence. And see, then you want to ascribe to Russia something that is contradictory to everything they have been saying, and we'll go all the way back to 2007, and you ascribe to them this threat that they don't have the capability to accomplish. They're not suicidal. They very much do want to have their security on their western flank secured, and they want to end this war in terms that's not just going to set the stage for another one. That's a fact. But that is not the same thing as they want to conquer Europe, and they're coming for you. That's been another canard that you've had everywhere from Mark Rutte, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Merz, that keep telling you over and over that they're coming for you. They're coming for you next. And that's just complete nonsense. And it doesn't matter. Let's just for the moment go down this path. Vladimir Putin wants to, secretly, no matter what he said, he actually wants to. Does he have the capacity to do this? Is this Munich? Is this 1938? If Ukraine submits, are they just becoming the next Czechoslovakia? That's commonly ascribed to what would result should Ukraine have a negotiated settlement to Moscow's satisfaction. But no, this is not 1938. It's 2025. And in 1938, there were no nuclear weapons anywhere. Now there are. So France, UK, and the United States, as part of NATO, have a nuclear arsenal. Maybe you've heard of it. So Russia is aware of it. They also have a substantial nuclear arsenal. And so the idea then, unlike with Hitler in 1938, if Putin wanted to make good on that, he knows he's got 3 nuclear arsenals pointing right in his direction. And he knows that if he goes in a direction that's anywhere near those, that it comes even close to threatening the territorial integrity of those countries, they're not just going to sit on their nuclear stockpile and let you roll in with a Red Army. Of course, that would be suicidal for them. Just like Russia will not allow a Blue Army to roll into Russian territory. They simply won't do it. That's why they have the nuclear weapons. That's why both sides have them. So you cannot make that argument unless you first explain a rational path to how the presence of nuclear weapons will allow Russia to do that, to where you could literally lose a conventional war. Let's hear it. Seriously, let's hear it. Explain that to me. But yet, you see in that audience that was there, you see that in the journalists that were there, nobody ever asks what should be an obvious question. How do you propose this is 1938? How is this like Munich when there were no nuclear weapons in Munich? And does Russia even have the conventional capacity to roll into Europe when you see that they're having so much trouble, even on the Eastern Front in Ukraine? Now, you can argue, and many do, that, well, Russia is just on this slow path because they think that is going to preserve their manpower and using firepower to increase the casualties on the Ukraine side. And there's some truth to that, but that's only limited. That only goes so far, because it will be incredibly difficult because of the presence of all these drones. And Ukraine is a very formidable power in terms of the drones and artillery and rockets. They don't have as many as Russia does, but they can impose a significant cost if you start massing forces, etc. I personally think that Russia could find some weak points and punch through and get in behind it. It would come at great cost, but I've always calculated that it would come at a overall less cost than having this attritional slow grinding movement here. But whatever, I'm not commanding the Russian forces, and pretty sure they're not listening to me, but it doesn't matter. That's what they've chosen to do. and they don't have the number of forces to effect a drive into a 32-member nuclear alliance with 3 nuclear weapons states. It simply doesn't exist. So either he's lying or he's gravely mistaken, but in either case, that is the reality. And that's what we focus on here, folks. That's the truth of it. So the most likely outcome of this is it's going to be just yet another operation and another platform for the West to continue to enrich its defense industrial base, to continue to build up the support among the warmongers, make them more rich, get them more campaign money from these defense contractors who are so happy with their patriotism and all that kind of stuff that goes along with that. And as is always the case, the bill payers are going to be the Ukrainian people, the men whose lives you are sacrificing for no possibility of success. There is not going to be this miracle. There's not going to be some silver bullet found that somehow magically we haven't found in the first 3.5 years. It doesn't exist. And so we are condemning Ukraine to loss on the battlefield and the loss of a generation of their men that can never be replaced. Never be replaced. That's where we are, folks. And that's what you need to understand here. So when you keep hearing all these claims on the Western side and all these high-ranking uniforms on the Ukraine side, they're unified in their disconnection from reality. And eventually, whether quickly or a long time, it's not going to be a generational struggle to a win. It'll be potentially a generational struggle to complete and total defeat. That's where they're heading for. We'll continue to track this. I want to let you know this afternoon at 1 o'clock, which is only 45 minutes from now, we're going to have Larry Johnson back on us today. We're going to talk about a number of things. He's got some very interesting things to say on his sonar21.com that we want to get him to elaborate on for us. A lot of things happening in Russia, Ukraine, also in the Middle East. And he's even got some interesting ballistic information on the Charlie Kirk assassination situation. Very fascinating. Do join us then. You don't want to miss it. At 1 o'clock today, Larry Johnson on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.